What is going on, everyone, and happy 2026. It is not yet 2026 where I am. It is still a little bit of daylight here in Los Angeles as we wrap up 2025, but I could not be more excited for this year coming. So we're going to let a few people hop up in the chat and we're going to discuss everything that I'm excited about for this year. But on top of that, we're going to talk about some serious trades that have been cooking, some trades that are coming in 2026, and more importantly, what we're looking forward to for this next year. I could not be more excited to turn the page. I'm sure you guys saw my last video. I'm sure a lot of you did. 2025 needs to go. We're done with this year. What a year. Time to move on. It is time to GTFO of this year. Shout out to everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. I know we have a lot of people across the world. So wherever you are, if it's already 2026, Happy New Year. If you're drunk and watching this, I don't know, crypto drunk, to each their own. I'd probably be doing something else than watching me. But shout out to you guys. Shout out, hey, it's Marty. Let some people hop up in the chat. And we're going to do this because, to be honest, I know it's a holiday. I know it's a slow time. But there's just a lot going on. And I can't help but be really excited about markets, especially if you guys saw my last video. I'm very excited about one thing in specific, which is, what's up, Dino? What's up, everybody? We're just gonna go ahead and just hop into the content. I have a new Twitter bio, and it means a lot. I don't know. I thought about this, and this is kind of where I want to go with the content here. Obviously, crypto is going to get its rotation. It's going to get its time in the light, and I believe it will be bigger and badder and last longer, and it will most likely be a long slope upwards here for crypto with this legalization push. Again, remember, the biggest things we're looking forward to for crypto, the government buying Bitcoin, that never happened. The government fully legalizing crypto applications with regulatory framework still hasn't happened yet. We believe that will happen in 2026. That's the only prediction I'm going to make about crypto specifically in 2026, is that we will see the market structure bill, which is the big one. That's the big kahuna. And it needs to happen in 2026, or it might not happen, because it's looking like the Democrats will recapture the House in 2026. So it's got to happen. But meanwhile, I've been watching all kinds of money being made kind of from the outside looking in, the rainy glass window. And one of the things that I haven't been doing because I'm so focused on crypto is seeking truth. Like, as a core premise of the way to view financial markets is a way to discover and find ultimate truths. Because one of the things that people struggle with, I think especially now in the post-fact era of the internet, is when you look at the world, you have a single event. And a lot of people, this is a random rant, but a lot of people will see a single event and they'll have their own opinions on it. There's no single event that anyone even agrees on anymore. Some figure will die. Some people celebrate it. Some people say it's horrible. Someone will get, killed on the streets. And then depending on the demographics involved, some people will claim, it's a tragedy. Some people will claim it's a product of the system. Without getting into politics here, it's hard to agree on anything. We can all agree that. It's hard to agree on any fact. But these are facts. These are actual facts. The market was red today. There was more buyers than sellers. The market was green today. There was more, buyers than sellers. There was more sellers than buyers if the market's red. The price moves are actual facts. These are universally agreed on real truths. And from them, you can actually find other truths. And so I think that the way to be the best in markets is to actually just be raw in your pursuit of truth, to also be optimistic, to also be excited. But that's why we're going with this particular tagline for 2026, which is seeking truth with convexity. And convexity is a way to say, hey, if we're right about this, if we're right about the truth that we've found, then we're going to make a lot more money than if we're wrong. And that's the ultimate goal. So I think there's enough people in here now. I know it's a holiday. We're not going to get a ton of people here. So shout out to everyone who's still here, who's still trucking on. As you guys know, I'm still trucking. I'm still excited. And let's just get into it because it's a holiday. It's going to be a little sleepy. This is the biggest thing. And we're going to be talking about this in a lot more detail. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah. This is the biggest sort of, I guess, truth that we want to get to, which is we know what the political motivation out there is right now. And the truth is that the markets are at all-time highs. Stock markets have done well. Real estate's at all-time highs. Obviously, it's cooled off in specific markets. but a lot of markets are still very near all-time highs, historically massively overvalued. And here we have the desire to print more money. And obviously, we always cheer on money printing here in crypto land. We love money printing because we know that it finds its way into our coins, and we all want to be rich, not tomorrow, but today. And so when we see stuff like this, we get excited. But it's objectively a bad idea, and it's certainly not what has happened throughout history, that the Federal Reserve and money printing have been used just to make one party more popular than the other. They've specifically been separated. Now, having a Federal Reserve at all, that's a question whether or not we need one. But this is what's coming. And we're about to have alignment between the executive branch and the Federal Reserve, which means we know what it means. We're literally going to read it, which is rates are going to zero. We're going to see rates smash down likely to zero, however low it takes for the markets to go crazy into the midterms, because the Republicans are polling horribly for the midterms. It looks like they're going to lose the House in the midterms, which is going to cause a chaotic tailspin for the next 2 years. So what's going to happen is they're going to try to pull out all the stops to say, hey, look, we've delivered the biggest turnaround in the world, but it does risk inflation, right? It does risk the economy running hot. But what we see here is that the desire to give things to the market, to give a good outcome, is more important than the outcome itself or the potential second order consequences. So this is what's happening. This is a universal truth. We know this because we know enough about Trump. We know enough about the polling. We know enough about history here. And he's telling us this is what they're going to do. We also know in May of 2026, he's going to get his Fed share. So we should be looking at 2026 as a combination of very clear factors, which is one, political desire to spend money. Two, equities are very expensive, especially the Mag 7, the top of the line equities. Those are very expensive. But we have seen a massive rotation into other things. We'll be talking about those today. And crypto has not gotten its big rotation from this bull market. Crypto has been left behind in so many ways in this bull market. And I believe if you look at the charts, you'll see that Bitcoin from the top, it put in here in December of 2024. This was about 110K, right? It wicked up to like 109 and change. It only made about a 16% total increase over that after a horrifically scary, choppy, agonizing year. And then it dumped, almost immediately, right? It dumped almost immediately. So a lot of people are saying that this was the 4-year cycle still intact. Obviously, it technically qualifies. But I think we can all agree that it felt very different, the Bitcoin 4-year cycle this time. And altcoins were just not even a part of it, right? If you look at total 3, not excluding stable coins, but just total 3. Do I have it here? Where's total as well? All right, well, I don't have total 3 here. Let me just bring it up here. If we look at just total 3, we can see it's an obvious wait, why did total 3 have a spike? Was that, am I still on the right chart? Am I on the right chart? I'm not on the right chart. All right, others shows this very perfectly, right? We have the top is in December 2024. We don't even get we get essentially a perfect retest, a lower high and then down, right? So this would be exactly what you'd expect in a bear market, exactly what you'd expect in a bear market. And so I've been of the belief that all of 2024 was an altcoin bear market, right? And that's sort of where my mental model is. So I'm all about hearing honest takes about the cycle, but it's very obvious to me that altcoins in specific were not participating in 2025. Bitcoin barely participated in 2025. All of the heat was in other sectors. And so I'm very open to hearing analysis across the spectrum, but let's just be fair. And I think a really good way to look at this is to look at Bitcoin as it's priced against gold. Let me see if I can find this this tweet here because it's really good. Essentially, Bitcoin against gold topped in December of 2024. I don't have I'll bring this up. We'll go into this a little later. But getting back to the core idea of 2026, in my opinion, crypto has not been a part of 2025. So seeing things get better is what I'd like to see. Obviously, we're seeking truth here. The charts aren't screaming upwards yet. They're just kind of chopping sideways. It's pretty annoying. And again, I have a theory I'm about to go into about everything post 1010. This is your little taster. This is your amuse-bouche here. But I have a theory I have not put out yet about October 10th, and I'm going to talk about it here. But knowing this about Trump, knowing this about 2026, and seeing constant sort of loss porn here, and I guess quitting porn, if for lack of a better term. I shouldn't say the P word. I don't know if that's going to get this video hidden even more. I know that a lot of my subscribers haven't been getting my posts lately, so I don't know if my channel is being hidden, but we'll figure that out at another time. I'm seeing consistent posts here about people saying they're giving up on crypto. It's not what they thought it was, and they're moving away. And these are typically things you see in the bottom of the bear market. If crypto is ripping up in price, we wouldn't see these types of posts, right? So fundamentally, people would be okay with everything ethos-wise that crypto is if the prices were up. And if prices go down, then they're fundamentally not okay with it. We're going to break down the psychology of why that is in another video, but it's worth knowing that this is what I'm seeing all over the timeline. Typically, these happen around bottoms. This is not in and of itself a guarantee that prices can't go lower, but this is typical of bear market bottoms. We're also seeing other metrics correct, like Bitcoin long-term holders stopped selling here. And you can see they even started buying a little bit. These are good things. These are on-chain metrics. These are things that are provably good for Bitcoin. And we can also assume that whatever violence was happening on the Bitcoin chart as it pertains to year-end tax selling is done now, right? This is about to be the next year. We can't do tax selling in next year. But here is where I think we get to an interesting point, which is when you pair this with what's going on with the spending into the markets to create the best market possible. We know that there's an issue around affordability, but also we've seen the rise of AI start to become a push towards people just simply not believing that they have a chance to escape the prison of financial mediocrity, right? Which is a great article. This article went super viral. Where is it? I think it got 15 million views. That's really viral. 24,000 likes. Anyway, so this, you've probably seen it, but the TLDR here is that people are being pushed increasingly towards degeneracy, even if they have really good jobs. And that's because it's impossible to break free without owning assets. And it's impossible to get assets of significant size without taking significant risk, right? So I had this highlighted. It just dropped away. But effectively, he shares a story about someone who's farming lighter or another perp dex, and they have a good job. And he's just degen farming with his money because what am I going to do? Save for 20 years and buy a condo when I'm 55? Unfortunately, with social media in the world we're in, people are frustrated. They want to have a supernatural, a super, extraordinary life. And in order to do that, you have to take extraordinary risks. He also talks about longing degeneracy. This is the ultimate concept here, which is, I don't think it has to be long degeneracy. I would say it has to be long. You have to be long something, right? You cannot be long nothing. In order to participate in this next era of society where everything has been hyper financialized, from prediction markets to the words people say, now you're seeing an explosion of Pokemon and other types of collectibles. You're seeing gold and silver go crazy. You're seeing space stocks, pot stocks, all these different areas, AI, robotics, and crypto is going to find its way into the heat once again. But it's about understanding that you need to own stuff. You need to own stuff to participate in this next era, and that people, as they become increasingly desperate to participate and to break free, they will put their money into alternative bets. It's not going to be the S&P 500. It's not going to be the Mag 7. It's not going to be these assets that give you maybe 20% on a really good year. It's going to be other stuff that people are going to be looking for to get that increased purchasing power. And that is a general mental model. So what are those things, right? Again, we're going to go through this slowly, but it's important that we highlight we are coming into a prophetic year, right? So there's this old chart that goes back, I think, hundreds of years or something like that. But it essentially has, I'm going to bring it up so it's a little bigger for you. It essentially has years in which panics have occurred at the top, the A line. The C time are years of hard times. As you can see, these 2012, I guess, was a pretty hard time. It was still, making its way out of the dot-com bubble or the great financial crisis. I haven't verified all these years. It's just this zigzag chart. I'm sure you guys have seen this. Anyway, 2026 here, you can see it right here. Well, you can see it on your own. My cursor isn't showing. But 2026 is supposed to be a great year. So hopefully 2026 fulfills the prophecy here. And just like 2007 or 99, which were the peaks before actual crashes, 2026 is a good year. And I think when you combine it with this tweet, it's pretty clear that if there is a crash coming, they don't want it to happen in the midterm year. They don't want that, right? So there is potential that this might be a crash under other circumstances, but because we have unchecked or unprecedented is a better word, government spending, that we don't get that crash. We instead get just a crazy up year. And then maybe the up year is sort of kept that way from artificial spending, but it's still an up year. So I'm long degeneracy. I'm long assets that are trending, and I'm going to be long trends, and I'm not going to be fighting the trends, right? I'm not going to be putting my own opinion on trends. I'm going to be observing them and seeking truth. We're going to be talking about those trends a lot at the end. But again, I just think it's really important that you guys understand that alts have been in a bear market for a year now, for over a year, arguably for 4 years, right? But they have been in a bear market for a year. So maybe the pain goes on longer. But I think at this point, you're seeing a lot of alts just kind of chop sideways with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin drops, of course, alts will drop more. But I think they'll drop probably more or less in tandem with Bitcoin. I think that the extreme punishment to alts is likely over. Doesn't mean that your alt's going to go up. It doesn't mean that anyone's guaranteed wealth. But I think the teams that are still chugging, that find their way to be relevant, will do better in 2026 than they did in 2025. Now for the fun stuff. We're going to get into this before we go into the asset stuff, because the asset stuff is coming. It's going to be really good. But this is a crazy theory, okay? I've been thinking nonstop about October 10th. I know I shouldn't be fixated on it, but it's different. It's different than what we've seen in the past. Came out of nowhere, flash crash. Some alts went down 96, 98% to literal zero, multi-billion-dollar projects. And the question is, who benefited? Because I believe that when these things happen, someone benefits. And there's a lot of stuff that we still don't know. If it was as simple as a simple computer glitch, I could understand that. But it doesn't feel that way, because everything that happened afterwards, the market has not traded the same. Now, a lot of people are screaming on one side, this has just exposed the actual illiquidity and the sort of low quality nature of crypto altcoins and the market in general. That might be true. But what's also true is some people got wiped off the board. Some really big people got wiped off the board, and most of them were market makers, right? So my question is, who benefited from killing the market makers, right? We know the mechanics of what happened. There was what's called an auto deleveraging event, where there was some issues on Binance. Effectively, they removed everyone's shorts and the market plunged. And so these market makers, which normally short and hold the coins, were only holding the coins, and the coins dropped. So they lost a lot of money. They weren't able to make up the money shorting. If you didn't understand, that doesn't matter. The point is, we know the mechanics of what happened. The question is, why did it happen? Who benefited from this? You know, like what happened behind the scenes? And this is where I haven't been able to shake the feeling that there was something larger here. The more that I think about it, essentially, market making and arbitrage, like high frequency trading, buying stuff when it's slightly overpriced on Coinbase and selling it on Binance, those arbitrage across the crypto ecosystem, that is the biggest guaranteed way to make money in this industry. It's captivating the passive flows of crypto. And there are some really big entities that do that in traditional finance, right? Massive entities, and none bigger than Citadel, right? None bigger than Citadel. So this guy, Ken Griffin, who, looks a little strange here, let's be honest. I think people like him benefit the most from this. And it does surprise me. It does rouse a little bit of curiosity to know that Citadel announced their plans to enter crypto in 2025. Not surprising, every big financial institution did this. But the timing of them announcing their entry into crypto, and a few months later, all the big market makers get massive holes in their balance sheet, effectively wiped from the board, just in time for all the banks to move in and Citadel to start providing liquidity for crypto, feels very coincidental, feels too coincidental. And I'm not making any allegations here because I don't have any hard facts, but I can't help but think about who benefited from October 10th and feel as though the market makers getting wiped off the board, like Wintermute, who had this entrenched lead that they, people like Citadel just simply wouldn't want to compete with. Maybe, just maybe, there was some coordination there. Obviously, we know that Binance was absolved of all of its sins very shortly after October 10th. There was a lot of weird choreography here. The issue happened on Binance, the pardon from CZ, the entry of Citadel. This is all just, pontificating here. However, I find it fun to pontificate on, and I think it might explain what's happening. Now, if I'm right, what it means is that the industry is growing up and that the future will not have October 10th because the liquidity plumbing will be much more secure. It'll be backed by bigger players. However, I believe there's been a changing of the guard. I believe there's been a changing of the guard because of October 10th, and I believe that this guy benefits more than anyone. Him and Larry Fink, probably. So that's my thought process. That's my thought process on October 10th. And let me know if you think that that's interesting, at least. It's not a theory I've heard anyone else talk about, and it's just been me just constantly spiraling, trying to ask myself who benefited from this, because someone did. Someone did. Okay. You also have some anger coming out at Fundstrat, who apparently have privately put out in their newsletter a call for $60,000 for Bitcoin while Tom Lee was gigabulling. Again, the biggest thing you need to understand is that I don't think anyone has a magic crystal ball here. The liquidity's low. When the rotation happens back to crypto, no one will be owning it compared to who was owning it 3 months ago. A lot of people have sold and left. And that means that when the prices start moving up, everyone will need to buy to get back on. And that's what creates massive upside. I still also believe that it will be a choppy and difficult year for a lot of altcoins with a ton of supply overhang. Any altcoins with massive supply increases happening that aren't directly, like I'm not talking about the V33 DEX model where you're effectively farming and you're getting a yield. I'm talking about just the big altcoins, the big layer ones, the big ones who are just emitting tokens without any real sort of offset to that pressure. I think it's going to be a hard year for those improperly positioned altcoins, but I do think that some altcoins will do very, very well. We'll talk about the sectors towards the end of this video, but I do think that as we see institutional adoption, the rails and the infrastructure, things like V33 DEXs, things like prediction markets, things that allow and cultivate the actual speculation within the industry will perform very well. And I also think that coins that have very tight supply control, if they do get marketed well, those are going to be the ones that can perform well. We'll talk about the exact sectors at the end of the video. Okay, before we get all crazy, I wanted to recap this because this is the most, I haven't been showing my screen. It's okay. Yeah, this is what I was showing. Okay, before we get into anything else, we need to talk about metals. Like I said on my last video, I'm going to be covering relevant topics, and there's nothing more relevant right now than silver. Silver has a chart that everyone essentially wishes was their altcoins chart. Look at this. I put up a tweet a couple of days ago, and it got, what was this? Like, where was this? Yeah, 11,000 likes. That's above average, okay? Way above average, almost 1 million views on this tweet. The 50-year chart is absolutely insane for silver, right? And look at this chart. It is insane. It is absolutely insane. Here you go. I'm sure you guys have seen it. Anyway, so what's going on with silver? Let's find out, because this guy was the head of commodities at Bridgewater. This guy Campbell, he's got the chops. He's been around precious metals for a long time. I've not myself understood these on a deep level, but he's taken the time to give us the alpha. In 2026, again, I'm trying to cultivate as much expert information as I can on a topic, synthesize it for you, and we can become masters together. Something like metals, I'm not going to tell you guys that I am an expert on. I just don't know that much about them. But what I have seen on the charts, it looks abnormal. Just that chart looks like there's only been 3 times in the last 50 years that it's looked like this. And each time there's a very clear reason. And so let's talk about the clear reasons right now. One, gold has been up only, and people are not trusting governments like that, not like they used to. But I'm going to get you the full wrap up here, because this is a long piece. We're not going to spend all day. So the bottom line is silver's probably done its thing for the short term. However, long term, there are real bull cases here for silver. Silver is the metal that is used in solar energy, and solar energy is effectively becoming the cheapest source of energy in the world, and we can assume that that will grow. That's the basic idea here. And so he lays this out by saying AI demands energy, which demands solar, which demands silver. So AI demands silver. That's the basic idea here, is that if you want to understand where the demand for silver is coming from, this isn't because people make really cool watches, and that's white gold, baby, that ain't no silver. But it's not because people make very cool watches and rings out of silver. It's because it is a very useful metal in the production of solar energy, right? So he said that there's something called London backwardation, which effectively means that people are paying way more for silver today versus promises of silver tomorrow. And that means that there is fear, and that is there is an unsettling brokenness within the market. There's a desperation in the market, right? This points at there being significant further demand. Asia is paying $10 to $14 premiums. We're talking about an $80, $70 asset. So $10 to $14 is a massive premium, up to 20% premium, right? At $14, that's a 20% premium. Massive, right? China is about to stop exporting silver. They strategically got into silver. Apparently, they more or less monopolize silver production, over 70% of the global supply. Solar demand is inelastic, and they believe that the cost that it would stop being logical to produce silver is $134. I think that's the way this is set up. So there's a lot of real bull cases here. There's a lot of real bull cases here for silver, and that's why people are going crazy for it. I think people should be aware of it. Again, I don't think this is the time to buy because the chart looks absolutely crazy. Let's just take a look at the silver chart for 2 seconds here. And it is unfortunate. I've been spending a lot more time in these traditional finance sectors of TradingView than I have in my crypto sectors because it's just been super boring. At the very best, it's been boring in crypto for the last few months. And meanwhile, silver's look like this, right? Since the bottom here and since our altcoin started nuking right here, right? Or right, where was this? Pretty much right here. We had the beginning of the pain for altcoins, and it's just been a parabola up in silver. So the difference between losing like 80% or gaining 3x pretty much. Anyway, the point is silver's been very interesting, but obviously it looks a lot like charts that have blown off in other markets. Everyone knows how to spot an absolute parabola. But the question is this just a blow off top? Is this just a FOMO top, or is there something here? I believe that when silver comes back, if it does come back and retests the sort of big breakout level here, and I need to go to the weekly chart to even get back to it. But you can see that this was the big breakout from the 1970s, right? This was a high established in the 1970s. This is crazy, right? There was a high established 50 years ago that it just broke out of. So if it comes anywhere close to hitting this yellow line again, feels like that's a time to trust this change in behavior and say, wow, this is a 50-year cup and handle. So I don't know. Those are the types of assets where I love crypto. I love altcoins. We're still building. Still, all my wealth is and time is concentrated in building in crypto. But we can't just ignore that essentially these charts have been up only, right? And so I think that's the part of the content that I want to bring in for 2025 or 2026 is to say, okay, there's some very significant trends outside of crypto that are exciting to think about. It's exciting. It's stimulating mentally. They're real, and it's not going to hurt to make some money betting on them. So silver, interesting. Again, I think that's more or less covered it. Oh, this is pretty interesting, right? So in trying to understand if I was early or late to silver, I saw people comparing silver to like the S&P. And as you can see, it's still very low compared to where it was back in 79. It's still very low compared to where it was back in 2011. That was the peak of the last silver run. But I just, for fun, this morning drew a line between these. And obviously this was, super compelling as you're seeing this cup down here, but now it's kind of really broken out here. And the question is it running up against a trend, right? Is it running up against a trend that has now been established? Is this trend line valid? I don't know. We're comparing silver against the S&P 500, the SPX. This makes sense, right? Why it at least hit resistance here, right? But if it breaks it, let's say it comes down and eventually breaks through it, then it could be looking to target these levels or these levels, which would mean that it would, outperform the S&P by 3.5x or 40x. I don't know. Yeah, it's really big. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just saying this is the trend of silver versus the S&P. This is the trend of gold versus the S&P, which even looks a bit cleaner because it hasn't had this breakout from these levels. Had this breakout down here, but you still have essentially this breakout to the same trend line, which would be 30%. So gold might outperform the S&P by 30% if it's able to get above, this resistance, right? Again, gold trades against the dollar, doesn't trade. Nobody buys gold in SPX, but it's worth understanding these trends are pretty long, right? Like this downtrend was nonstop and it lasted for since 1979 to 2000. Then this trend was a 10-year trend, right? Where gold pretty much outperformed the S&P for 10 years. And then this trend was, it was another 10, 15 years, right? So these trends are long-term, right? When they turn for a long time. And I know it's kind of crazy being in crypto because trends usually last a millisecond. But these are trends where I think you have to start getting in the habit myself of trusting these longer-term trends. And this is something that I find very interesting, trying to understand why it's happening. Obviously, we know why people are flocking to things like gold. And we believe that people will start flocking to things like Bitcoin as the gold trade becomes a little more oversaturated. Make no mistake, crypto is going to be a part of this explosive, degenerate next era of finance. It's just been sullied by a lot of negativity in the space, to be honest. There's still an argument. I believe there's an argument to be made that this entire thing was an echo boom, right? That we saw throughout this entire market cycle. It was just, let me get off logarithmic. It never formulated into a new bull run. It was just an echo. And so the next bull run for altcoins, I believe that people are still shaking off the cobwebs for everything that happened in 2021. That's what I think is a decent possibility. I'm just going to remove all these drawings. But I think it's possible that what we saw, because it never even hit these highs, was that altcoins just never were able to overcome some of the sort of negative sentiment towards crypto that built up during the boom bust of 2021. So that's possible, right? And that's something that I think means that the next cycle will be much, much bigger. I think comparing the gains that we saw here and saying, well, we should expect even less next time, I don't think that's the right mentality. I think that crypto is still finding this exact product market fit, the exact verticals it's going to truly revolutionize, and that as those become proven over the next couple of years, it's going to be a very, very long and hopefully sustainable and trustworthy bull run that takes us years and years and years upwards, because we're in a climate where people simply are scared of financial mediocrity. And so once crypto starts kicking and the money starts printing from this industry and the rails are being bet on because they are showing that they're working and that they're capturing fees, they're capturing flows, and they're capturing massive chunks of the financial system, this is where people will turn to. Because right now people are turning elsewhere, right? People have turned to things like NVIDIA over the past couple of years, absolutely crazy stock, right? They've turned to the AI trade. And in 2026, we're seeing a lot of excitement around a few different verticals. One of which is the space stocks. I'm going to talk about the non-crypto stuff at the end. Anyway, let me get to some of this stuff. Where else? Again, if we compare Bitcoin, so if we compare Bitcoin to gold, we see a top here in December of 2024, right? Again, showing that we didn't really get a bullish market in 2025, not versus gold, which you could argue makes it a bear market. I personally feel like if Bitcoin didn't outperform gold, it's very hard to call that a bullish year, even though on paper it made a 16% total net increase in advance, finished the year negative. I think there's a lot of reasons to believe we didn't get a traditional year. And that's the point being made here. I also see some other stuff that's worth talking about. For example, crypto condom here. Great account name, at least. I don't really know anything about this account. This tweet is interesting. They're saying that there's potential that this notice is setting up a uranium strategic reserve. Again, I think that when you look at the context here, which is that the government's going to print and stimulate, and then you also look at things like China banning the exports of silver, China taking control of rare earth minerals, setting up the gold corridor. They're setting up all kinds of strategic advancements around solar energy. They're really trying to capture the market around drone warfare. Like, there is so much happening in this game of chess that you have to understand that the US will act defensively, right, on a global stage, that we haven't seen this type of rivalry between the US. I mean, I haven't seen it in my lifetimes. The US has just been number one my whole life. Now, the US has a formidable competitor, and China has meaningful advantages, meaningful competitive advantages in labor, in minerals, in production pipeline, It is significant. Okay. So when you see things like this, let me find this tweet again. When you see things that might indicate that we might look at, hey, the US might get strategic around another asset like uranium, or they might get strategic around another asset like AI, or they might get strategic around another thing like microchips or whatever it might be. These are the signals that you just want to set up shop next to the government money printers, right? And that money will find its way into crypto eventually. But there's also other ways to position yourself. And for example, where was this? Putting up way too much fire content on Twitter. That's what's happening. Where is this? Okay. The copper gold ratio. This is not hard. This is literally hard science, but this is not a guarantee is what I mean to say. And this period can last a while. And I'll just get this shown for you. On the bottom is copper versus gold ratio. It oscillates, right? You can see it peaks up here. The numbers are too small. You can see that the top line is something that it seems to oscillate back to. The bottom line keeps dropping lower. However, it can spend a period of time bottoming here. But once it reverses the copper versus gold ratio, it's typically very good for Bitcoin, and it's very, very good for risk assets in general. So this is another reason to look outside our bubble and say, okay, well, what are we seeing here? Also, that might mean copper is a good buy, right? We're trying to buy stuff that goes up. If copper versus gold is improving and we're bullish on metals in general, then copper might be a good buy. And in fact, I want to bring this back here because where was it? It's the Campbell article. Where's the Campbell article? Got too many tabs. Here we go. In the Campbell article, this guy is the former commodities lead at Bridgewater, Ray Dalio's firm. If you guys know Ray Dalio, absolute one of the best investors of all time. And Bridgewater, I believe, is the biggest hedge fund in the world. Okay. So what he says here is that there's actually a possibility that energy, especially in solar, can be substituted for copper. That the silver in the energy production pipeline may be eventually substituted for copper if silver gets too expensive. And so he's saying, like, he goes through this exercise where he prices the possibility that this happens. He effectively says it takes 1.5 years to convert each one of these factories to copper plating, and it takes 4 years to reach 50% copper. I'm not an expert in this, but he's essentially telling you here's what the cost is going to be to move these factories from silver to copper. Now, he says, he essentially says at $28 an ounce, the 2024 average, the industry makes $31 billion. At $79 an ounce, they're down $16 billion. Profits cut in half, and they kept buying. The break even is $134 an ounce for silver. That's why he's saying that there's still a lot of room to go here where the producers of energy can be profitable by buying silver at $134 an ounce, or that's their break even, where they'll start losing money above there. So he's saying that this is not a price target. This is where demand destruction just begins, right? This is just the beginning of demand being destroyed for silver itself. But he's saying that there is a real possibility that the industry itself switches to a cheaper metal like copper, right? And that's all he's saying. And so, again, these are dynamics that we need to be aware of, because if en masse the silver industry starts shifting into the copper industry because of AI, these are trades that we should have on our radar. And we should also be aware that these trends we can also be aware that these trends will also affect risk assets, right? Because we're seeing different forms of correlations between assets, different trends that have held true over long periods of time. These are very interesting things that are happening in the market. And these are also things that I'm excited about because they're long-term bets that, if they're right, can pay off massively, right? Understanding the swing of copper against silver will be a massive play. It will make huge X's, right? And also understanding that as that happens, it could bode well for risk assets, right? Because it has every time in the past, okay? Those are just interesting things that we should be looking at as an investor base and tracking as we formulate our thesis for 2026. Okay. This was just essentially a tweet saying that they don't see a recession coming. I don't believe anyone can accurately predict these recessions, but I also think that the risk of recession is significantly lowered by the demand to spend money. All right, so now we've gotten through the over macro other stuff, like just how I'm seeing the world right now. We're going to talk a little bit about altcoins. So if you guys are enjoying this, I've seen the viewers. I know it's the holiday steadily creep up, so nobody's leaving. I'm glad if you're spending your holiday with me. I appreciate you guys. The next part will be very interesting, and we're going to be talking about altcoins. I don't want it to feel also on this channel as if I'm losing interest in altcoins. I'm gaining interest in other stuff. I'm not losing interest in crypto. I'm gaining interest in other stuff because, quite honestly, just got my butt kicked this year, soon to be last year. Cannot wait for this to be last year. Got my butt kicked this year, and I'm excited to get better, right? And the way to get better is to change your process. So in changing my process, I'm absolutely taking in every single piece of financial data. Crypto, for example, Coinbase's big announcement was that they're going to add stocks and perps on stocks and prediction markets. They're becoming Robinhood. Robinhood's big thing is they're adding, stock tokens and equities and prediction markets. They're becoming Coinbase. Everything's becoming one big financial super app, and crypto is going to trade next to equities, is going to trade next to metals. It's all going to be one world, financial assets. And they're going to include crazy stuff too. We'll talk about some stuff like that at the end. So we all need to just evolve. Like, this is the new finance, but crypto isn't the new finance. Finance is the new crypto, if that makes sense. Crypto as a concept will probably disappear, and we will just see it as finance 2.0, which is tokenized, which is 24/7, which is self-custodial, which is truly owned, peer-to-peer, all the cool stuff that crypto is, but it will have all the assets in it. That's just, there's going to be no border between money. And that's really cool, but it means that we need to understand how that affects our analysis, right? So that's what's happening right now. I'm gaining interest in other stuff. So back to crypto though, I do think that I'm very much so in agreement with Ryan Watkins that we've seen the 4-year altcoin bear market is closer to an end than the beginning. And that doesn't mean that it flips tomorrow, but 2026 with a massive amount of spending could be the thing that triggers the level of liquidity required for altcoins to make a recovery. So in the crypto space, privacy is a big deal. We all saw Zcash, we saw Monero. I think privacy, and this is just a really good article by Elon, he's really big on Midnight. I think that regardless of the way you slice it, privacy is going to become something that people realize is an actual killer feature of crypto. Tell me another place where you can have totally private money. You had cash, but you have to go physically hand cash to someone. You have to mail it. You can actually have a fully private transaction in crypto, fully encrypted, off the grid, private money, doesn't exist anywhere else. It is only in crypto, right? DeFi, only in crypto, right? Perps, only in crypto so far. These are only in crypto innovations. Bitcoin, sovereign, store of wealth. These are the only in crypto things that I think people are searching for. They're getting back to those base principles of like, what does crypto do that we can't do anywhere else? And it's exciting to people. So privacy, truly private money is a huge step forward for crypto. I think the Zcash pump was symbolic that there is a growing demand for this. I also have a theory that some big whales, some big crypto whales are scared of what might happen with a swing back to the Democratic Party. And they're worried about having all their assets exposed. They're worried about things like wealth taxes, billionaire wealth taxes, etc. And I think private money, at least under Trump right now, is going to be a hot topic. And I think it'll probably attempt to be squished under the next administration. I think there'll be a hot potato type thing with private crypto. So, but once it's private, I mean, if you're buying it for price appreciation, that's negative. If you're buying it just to actually have private money, then it's not negative. It's just, that's the feature you want, which is privacy. And privacy doesn't mean you're doing anything illicit, right? If you want to do illicit stuff, that's on you. I think everyone has a right to privacy, right? To not have their private information, the things they buy, the things they want to buy, be exposed to the public. It shouldn't be that way. And that's been a huge shortcoming of crypto. In other news, the housing market is probably not going to get any better in 2026. And we know this because Trump has this clip where he essentially says if he does anything for the housing market, it will ruin the wealth effect of the baby boomers, right? And baby boomers have collected houses because that's how you got wealthy their whole lives. You buy property, it always goes up. It always goes up. The problem now is who's going to buy these properties? You have a generation of people who can't afford that. So I don't think that it's going to get worse, but I don't think it's going to get better. And we now know, and one thing you like about Trump, whether you hate him or love him, is that he says what's really on his mind almost directly a lot of the time. Not all the time. He's in character a lot, but when he's not in character, he'll give you nuggets. And this is a nugget, right? He pretty much admitted that no one in power can help the housing market because it's going to lower the cost of housing, which of course would make people's lives better. The whole generation of people waiting to start their lives, don't want to have kids, don't want to move forward in life because they can't afford a house. It's not right. But he's telling you in this clip, I'm here, I'll play it for you.
So on housing, you talked in your address last night about housing.
Yeah.
Are you still considering a national emergency over housing?
I'm looking at it.
What would that look like? What would that mobilize?
You know, there's two thoughts on housing. You have a lot of people have housing that because we have such a strong time and such a strong market, their houses are very valuable. It's a big part of their net worth, their house. I don't want to knock those numbers down because I want them to continue to have a big value for their house.
Yeah, so there you go. He doesn't want to knock those. I don't want to knock those numbers down. I mean, you're hearing it. He's telling you straight. Politicians know that it will lose popularity if they do something that will lower house values, because that's the wealth that baby boomers have built up. So, you know, if you're a younger person, you can't afford a house, you don't think you're going to be able to start a family, there is actively a political class that doesn't want to help out. And so I don't think it's going to be so simple as just take the permitting away, like make it easy to build. Like there's clearly no political will to do this. That's so 2026. I think the housing market probably chops sideways. I don't think housing crash. I don't think housing boom for sure. I think we just get chopped. And is it any coincidence that the moment we started printing massive amounts of money and supporting essentially the housing market, that housing prices went absolutely crazy and the amount of people having kids dropped off a cliff, right? We saw the peak was exactly the great financial crisis. Now, the other piece of data here is this is pretty much when the iPhone was released. It was like 2007, 2008. That was like iPhone. So social media mixed with expensive housing. I think it's all one nasty sort of combination. But these are the trends that we want to be understanding, which is like in a world where people aren't having kids because they can't afford houses, they don't feel like they can get ahead, they're going to pivot towards more and more desperate forms of wealth creation, even knowing that it's likely that they lose. And speaking of which, I'm really excited about what's going on with Black Hole Supernova. I know you guys, some of you speculated on the token. I obviously didn't want the token to lose value. It did. However, the DEX itself has continued to crush and produce yield. And if the market gets more hot, it will produce more fees because there will be more trading. It's like a call option. It's truly infrastructure that's facilitating the Avalanche chain, and Supernova will be on ETH. And again, this is just being given out, but I do think the V33 model is terrifying to existing infrastructure like exchanges. I think that it totally subverts their model, and that things like V33, in this case, AI XPT is talking about Aerodrome, but I think V33 is one of the areas in crypto that makes the most sense to me on a very pragmatic, non-emotional, not optimistic, not predictive, simply analytical framework. It's a really interesting way to upset the natural order of things, and it's a way for the community to actually own a piece of the flows from crypto, which I think is really I think in 10 years we'll look back and we'll say, dang, the things that were producing consistent yield in crypto for their holders, and that there was flow through the holders, that's what crypto was all about, is you wanted to own a piece of a business. This is just more on the supply crunch from silver. More on silver. Humanoid thesis. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting with Andrew Kang, who runs something called Mechanism Capital. He was a big crypto DeFi head back in 2021. And he pivoted and fully left crypto as soon as ChatGPT came out and started investing heavily into robotics. Now, he is, I highly recommend following him. And if you want to know the full thesis, check out this humanoid thesis. He put this tweet out back in September. Okay, really simply, this is the end game for AI, embodied AI, right? And humanoids are the end game for embodied AI because the world was built for humans. Doorknobs and driveways and every piece of our world we have that exists today is built for the human form. So having a human-shaped robot is actually the ultimate in robotics. And, you know, he sort of envisions it as the next evolution beyond digital software. I do think that it's pretty obvious to everyone that robots are going to be some of the biggest plays, some of the biggest industries in the world. It is the biggest industry. And I'm going to go through the experience of trying to buy some of these private companies that are doing robotics, specifically Apptronic and Figure AI, or Figure Robotics. I'm not sure if I'm saying their names right. I do think that this is one of the biggest opportunities in front of us. We see that the private market for robotics is only like 50 or 100 billion. It's under 100 billion, and it will very logically expand to the trillions in the future. So on a low end, I think we're looking at a 20x for those markets. I think that you could see them 100x or more in the future. Obviously, Tesla and Google are going to be like major players there. All these big mega cap tech companies will have some play in robotics, but really Tesla and Google are the only big ones that have meaningful advantages there. I think when you look over at the private companies, the humanoids it's just going to be very interesting. And so that's something I'm just really excited about. Not a lot of people are covering humanoids from like an investment standpoint. I think it's really valuable. I think it's gonna be valuable to talk about this stuff in 2026. And I think we're still very early compared to, other sectors, right? Emerging markets are going to be very interesting. And Mel Madison here is calling for India to be the emerging market of choice because he's showing a long-term, you can see a multi-year pennant or a symmetrical triangle here forming that if we break out of, could signify massive upside in India. Emerging markets actually outperformed the S&P this year. The EMs. So worth noting that there might be some very worthwhile long-term non-obvious trades. And if so, I think that this will bode well for sort of neobanks and other types of crypto native services that offer financial products that are available and offer cool stuff to the Indian market. So I think that this has a crypto tail component if you play it right, personally. Have more information on neobanks and all that stuff soon. And, somebody's put out the idea here that with the amount of whistleblower fraud and the amount of fraud going on in the government and the whistleblower payouts, that this is in and of itself a potential to make a ton of money. So if you find government fraud, if you're looking to make your first 10K or maybe 10 billion, go find some government fraud. Because apparently if you're a whistleblower, you can make an astronomical amount of money. I'm sure you guys saw that Nick Shirley video where he went and I'm sure you guys saw this, but he went to the Somalian daycare centers in Minnesota, and it got like, look at this. It got 100. Wait, was this just the clip? Oh, it got 149,000 bookmarks. It got 133 million views. 133 million views. You kidding me? And this guy just went with a camera and pointed it and discovered just that there was this massive fraud happening. Anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. Obviously, Nick Shirley is a great journalist, not taken away from him, but there's nothing stopping you from going and exposing billions in Minnesota in government fraud and becoming a whistleblower. I think whistleblowing is going to be a massive trend for 2026. I know that sounds crazy, but the world's crazy. The world's crazy. We got to adjust. And finally, another place that I'm going to be taking an interest is collectibles, because the trends are just undeniable. And I think when you take into context this, right, we're going to spend, even if it's illogical, even if we don't need to spend, we're going to spend to keep markets up, right? And then you take into account the financial nihilism, right? Then you take into account the prison of financial mediocrity, how people are desperate to get out of financial mediocrity. And you look and you say, okay, well, the reality is that collectibles have been explosive, right? And they will be a scarce place to play. What Bitcoin fundamentally is something scarce, right? You have something scarce and you have a lot of money. And that's the concept. A lot of money, something scarce, it will start to occupy all this space for demand. But the truth is that there are other scarce things. For example, we know that there are scarce collectibles. There are scarce Pokemon cards. There are scarce baseball cards. And wouldn't you know it, those have gone up a lot in value over the last several years. And I don't have a direct comparison as to those versus Bitcoin or whatever. But I think there is an easy way to understand how people born in the 90s, like myself, have a true emotional connection to things like Pokemon, to things like anime, to things like sports cards. And they also don't have the same emotional connection to traditional investing. So I think as time ticks on, crypto is embodying a trend of non-traditional investing, but that trend of non-traditional investing will extend beyond beyond crypto. And I will personally be foraying into buying some cardboard. I'm going to buy some cardboard here because smart people I know, multiple really smart people I know, have urged me that it is a must, that cardboard is a necessary piece of any investor portfolio in 2025 and 6. And so I will be buying some cardboard. I'll let you know how it goes. The way he says it here is, and this is nice actually, he says I don't own any besides a thing of Pokemon cards I've had in my closet since I was a little kid. I don't think there's anything of tremendous value there. But he says buy big, essentially by buying some blue chip cards or some top level cards. Those typically get the most value appreciation. It also seems simpler to me. You can buy one or two things and just watch it, as opposed to trying to create some kind of huge collection of these cards. So yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. Let me know if you're interested in having some collectibles conversations here on the channel. But in summary, crypto, I think, will benefit from a tremendous amount of spending. I think focusing on revenue generating protocols, specifically, I like V33 dexes. I like prediction markets. I think the trend will definitely be less hypey next year. I think that when you look at stablecoin networks, and specifically there's one that's a competitor to XRP called Canton, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening, and we can get very, very tactical here in a period of low hype, of low excitement. And I believe that there will be some very clear winners that expose themselves as the market starts to shake off some of the negativity here. I do believe that we have seen over a year of demand destruction, and that usually a year is about what you see for bear markets in crypto. And so let's see. I don't think expecting a full year bear market in 2026 makes a ton of sense. Could be wrong. I've been wrong a lot on crypto in 2025. But we're about to see massive spending, massive liquidity increases, and that should be very, very good. We're about to see a potential change in the ratio of gold to copper, or copper gold ratio. That has been extremely bullish for risk assets. Silver is in its own world, its own bull run, and it's driven by very real demand for AI, for solar energy. And that silver, if it gets too expensive, will start being converted into copper. So that's something to take and put in your back pocket. Oh, I didn't get to this. Let's get to this. Pot stocks, they just legalized weed effectively. They decriminalized it. It's no longer the same classification nationally. Pot stocks have done really, really well off this news, and they will probably do very, very well over the next year because they are coming off an 8-year bear market. Pot stocks are high up on my list. And the second is space stocks. And we know this because space stocks look like this. Rocket Lab, look at this. Look at this chart. That's a rocket. So Rocket Lab is the space stock leader, obviously after SpaceX. If you're in SpaceX private stocks or secondaries, good for you. The announcement that SpaceX will be going live on the stock market, IPOing at 1.5 trillion, has really created a massive wave here. So you have Rocket Lab, and then you also have Intuitive Machines, or Lunar. And you can see here, this is actually a lot earlier in the chart, but it is a beta to Rocket Lab. You can see that it spiked here a wick, but still a wick up to $135. And you can see that since really March of 2023, it's been under this 1350 range. It's just been in this massive kind of bearish consolidation, tried to break out and failed. And so this is the first time, again, it's been breaking out again, and now it's on the back of a space stock move, right? So if Lunar does hold these ranges and is able to break through this this range here, this $22, well, you can see it's pretty much clear skies up to $51, and then, you know, like the price targets get a little kooky, right? So these are the types of trends where I'm like, okay, it's not crypto, but if we are smart, and by the way, I've been also buying call options on these, which give you way more, essentially leveraged upside. They're more complex. We'll talk about them. I'm not an expert at these, but the one set of calls I bought was Rivian, and those calls have already appreciated, you know, massively. And again, Rivian has another insane chart where you can see it's got this, what is this, a 4-year bottom here. It really first hit this level in May of 2022. So almost 4 years here, 3.5 years. It's been in this process of trying to overcome this first spike down to $19. And it's just finally holding for the first time over $19 today, or the last few weeks. And so if this does take off, it could, you know, do the thing, right? It could do the thing. People are comparing it to the Robinhood chart. I don't think it's a direct comparison because Robinhood was much more profitable and benefited from, you know, a massive second stock market hype. So I don't want to compare apples to oranges here. But again, looking at these long-term charts that do these long-term curls, it's hard not to find them compelling, and we're going to be looking for them all over. We're going to be looking for narratives where we can find them. And we're just going to be trying to make the most amount of money here while we wait for crypto to do its thing, because I believe that crypto will be doing its thing, not just in 2026, but into the future. Like, we've just seen the legalization of this industry. It is so exciting. And in the meantime, if we're trading and we're taking risk, let's trade and take risks, and let's try to make as much money as possible. And I hope that 2026 is amazing to you. I hope it's amazing to me too. I hope you guys are enjoying these streams. I'm going to be bringing on some guests. I'm going to be trying to do a lot more live content. I think it's more interesting. Actually, we've got 482 of you. I haven't been jumping into the chats. Let's talk about your questions. Let's talk about your questions. Go ahead and fire them off, and I will try to get to them. I think people that remain in crypto and investing in general are no longer interested in total speculation like collectibles. That might be your opinion, but that's not what's happening in the collectibles markets. Collectibles, Pokemon, and specifically One Piece have been going absolutely bananas. Extreme bubbles and hype there. Happy New Year. Somebody says I'm trying to pump. No, I'm not trying to pump anything. I'm giving a very honest reflection on markets. Yep, crushed. Absolutely crushed. Buy from Ace Grading. Yeah. What's the lowdown on Supernova? I gave a little bit of an explanation. I mean, it's essentially going to be black hole on ETH. Obviously, ETH has a much bigger market opportunity. There's way more volume. There's also way more incumbents there, like big gorillas there. So it's not going to be as easy to flip everyone in a day. However, the opportunity to make a V33 stick on ETH, this is the first time that gas fees have been able to handle a V33 DEX with so many transactions. It's just an absolute pain. So it was just not feasible economically before. Now it is for the first time. The first time. Training my lungs for the opportunity to blow a whistle. Yeah, blow that whistle. That's what you got to be doing. Oh, I realize I'm not seeing all the chats. I'm just seeing the top chats. All right, guys. So I'm not seeing any urgent questions. I hope you guys have a good holiday. Let me know if you guys have anything you want me to cover on the next episodes. We're gonna be taking on every single market, you know, dropping biases, just trying to find truth with convexity. And hopefully we end 2026 a whole lot richer. As always, I hope you're well.